In the heart of a bustling airport, where the lives of people from all over the world intersect every day, Emily, a humble worker, discovers that her job is not just about fulfilling her duties, but a call to action. Inspired by the idea of creating an inclusive environment, she decides to challenge established norms and break down the barriers that divide people. But in her way stand not only the doubts and biases of her colleagues, but also her own fears. Will Emily be able to change the atmosphere at the airport and inspire others to embrace diversity? This is a story of courage, transformation, and the power of unity in a world where every voice matters. Stay tuned if you want to know how the story ends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the others. The small airport, where everyone knew each other, had a special atmosphere. Everyone was like one big family: employees, passengers, even security guards. But behind this idyll, there were other realities that many preferred not to talk about. Emily, one of the airport's oldest employees, was always on the front lines. Her friendly smile and willingness to help made her seem like the perfect employee. But behind this mask, there was a bias that she didn't realize. The airport was crowded that day. Passengers were rushing to catch their flights, and the air was thick with anticipation and excitement. Emily was checking in as usual when Layla, a dark-skinned woman dressed in a formal business suit, approached her desk. Layla was on the verge of panic. She was rushing to an important meeting that could change her career. She had all the necessary documents in her hands, but unfortunately, it did not help. Emily looked at Layla and felt a sense of distaste that she couldn't explain. Perhaps it was her stereotypes, perhaps something deeper. She began asking questions about tickets and documents, and despite Layla providing everything, Emily found an excuse not to let her on the flight. "Sorry, but you don't have enough documents," she said in a cold tone, not noticing how Layla was starting to lose confidence. Layla was in shock. She knew everything was fine, and she couldn't believe that she was being turned away just because of the color of her skin. Tears were in her eyes, but she tried to keep her cool. "But I have all the documents," she said, trying to remain calm. Emily just shrugged, not wanting to listen. At that moment, the airport manager, Jason, approached the counter, noticing the tension in the air. He was known for his fairness and willingness to protect the rights of passengers. Jason, seeing what was happening, intervened. "What's going on here?" he asked, turning to Emily. She tried to explain, but Jason, noticing that Layla looked upset, immediately realized that the issue was not about the documents. He turned to Layla. "I'm very sorry that you had to go through this. I want you to know that at our airport, everyone is equal." Layla, full of gratitude, felt her heart fill with hope. Jason, taking a step towards her, added, "You can board the flight for free." These words were a real salvation for Layla. She felt supported, and this gave her strength. While Emily stood there in confusion, Jason continued, "We must learn from our mistakes and do everything possible to ensure that such situations do not happen again." Emily, realizing her mistake, felt ashamed. She realized that her bias could ruin someone else's life. This incident became a lesson for her, and she decided to change her attitude. Layla, with a smile on her face, thanked Jason and walked to the boarding gate, leaving behind an atmosphere of tension and bewilderment. This day was a turning point not only for Layla, but for the entire airport. The incident that happened made everyone think about the importance of equality and respect. Emily, standing at the counter, realized that her actions could have consequences and that everyone deserves respect, regardless of the color of their skin. After the incident at the airport, the atmosphere changed. Emily, realizing her mistake, began to rethink her views and behavior. She couldn't shake the guilt that was gnawing at her. Every time she passed the check-in counter, her thoughts returned to Layla and how she could have acted differently. Emily realized that her bias not only affected another woman's life, but also reflected her own internal fears and stereotypes. Over the next few days, Emily tried to be more attentive to her coworkers and passengers. She began to notice how often people judged each other based on appearance, and this discovery came as a real shock to her. She observed how some of her coworkers, like her, were biased without realizing it. Emily decided that she had to change something, not only about herself, but also about the environment around her. Shortly after the incident, Jason, the airport manager, organized a meeting for all staff. He wanted to discuss what had happened and emphasized the importance of equality and respect in their work. At the meeting, Jason shared his thoughts on the importance of creating an inclusive environment where every passenger feels safe and respected. He encouraged all employees to share their thoughts and experiences so that they could find ways to improve together. Emily gathered her courage and decided to speak up. She shared her experience and how her bias had led to an unpleasant incident. Her voice shook, but she felt it was necessary. "I realize that my stereotypes can hurt others," she said, looking at her colleagues. "I want to change my attitude and help create a more welcoming environment for everyone." Emily's words left an impression on her colleagues. Several of them began sharing their own stories, describing how bias and stereotypes affected their work and interactions with passengers. The meeting soon turned into a frank conversation about how they could work together to change the culture at the airport. Jason suggested diversity and inclusion training to help all employees better understand how their actions might impact others. He also suggested creating a support group where employees could share their experiences and find support from each other. The idea was met with enthusiasm, with many employees willing to participate. Emily felt that her voice was heard, and this gave her hope. She began to actively participate in the preparation of trainings, studying materials and inviting experts who could share their knowledge. She also initiated the creation of information boards at the airport, where materials on equality and respect were posted. Every day, the atmosphere at the airport became more open and friendly. Passengers began to notice the changes, the smiles of the employees became genuine, and the interaction with them became more human. Emily felt that her efforts were not in vain, and this inspired her to continue working on herself and helping others. But despite all the changes, Emily knew that working on her bias was an ongoing process. She continued to learn, read books and articles about diversity, and interact with people from different cultures. Each new experience enriched her understanding of the world and helped her become a better person. Shortly after the training began, Layla returned to the airport, but this time as a passenger rather than a victim of bias. Emily felt a surge of emotion when she saw her. She approached Layla and, mustering up her courage, apologized for her behavior. Layla smiled, accepted the apology, and thanked Emily for the changes that had taken place at the airport. For Emily, this moment became a symbol of the hope and change she was seeking to bring to her life and the lives of those around her. After Emily apologized to Layla, she felt a new responsibility fall on her shoulders. This moment was not just an act of repentance for her, but also the beginning of a journey of personal transformation. Emily understood that the changes she sought to implement at the airport had to be not only external, but also internal. She decided that she would work on herself to become not only a better employee, but a better person. Over the next few weeks, Emily actively participated in the diversity and inclusion trainings that Jason organized. These sessions opened her eyes to many aspects of bias and stereotypes that she had not previously thought about. She learned the importance of listening and understanding people rather than judging them by their appearance or background. Each training was a revelation for her, and she looked forward to the next ones. One day, during one of these trainings, Emily met Martin, a diversity expert. He was charismatic and passionate, and his approach to teaching was inspiring to all participants. Martin shared personal stories about how bias had affected his life, and this made Emily think about how her own actions could affect others. She felt that she had the opportunity to not only change herself, but also to influence those around her. After the trainings, Emily decided she wanted to do something more. She suggested to Jason that they organize open discussions for employees, where everyone could share their thoughts and experiences. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon such meetings became regular. They discussed not only issues of bias, but also general problems that employees faced in their work. This created an atmosphere of trust and support, and many began to open up to each other. Emily also began working on creating a mentoring program for new employees. She recognized that many of them might face bias, and wanted them to have the opportunity to receive support and advice from more experienced colleagues. The initiative was well received, and soon the airport had a group of mentors willing to share their experiences and help newcomers adjust. Emily became more and more confident in her actions with each passing day. She began to notice how her colleagues were changing, how they were becoming more open and responsive. Passengers also noticed the changes. Many of them said that they felt more comfortable and safe at the airport. Emily understood that this was not just her merit, but the result of the joint work of the whole team. However, despite all the successes, Emily knew that there was still a lot of work ahead. She continued to study, read books and articles about diversity, and interact with people from different cultures. Each new experience enriched her understanding of the world and helped her become a better person. Emily also began to actively participate in community events related to equality and inclusion issues, and this gave her the opportunity to expand her horizons. One day, during one of these events, Emily met Layla again. This time, Layla was a speaker, sharing her experiences and talking about the importance of fighting bias. Emily was amazed at how Layla had changed. She seemed confident and strong, and her words inspired everyone present. Emily felt proud that she was able to contribute to the change that had taken place at the airport. This moment symbolized for Emily that change is possible if you work on yourself and strive for the best. She realized that each of us can be an agent of change if we are willing to be open to new ideas and learn from our mistakes. Emily decided that she would continue her work to make the airport a place where everyone feels respected and valued. It was a long and difficult road, but she was ready for it, knowing that new horizons lay ahead. With each passing day, Emily became increasingly aware that her job at the airport was more than just a job description. It was an opportunity to impact people's lives. She realized that the changes she sought to make required not only effort, but also a deep understanding of human nature. Emily decided that she needed to deepen her knowledge of cultural differences and biases to become a more effective change agent. Inspired by the trainings and open discussions, Emily began actively seeking out new sources of information. She enrolled in courses on intercultural communication and psychology, where she studied how different cultures perceive the world and how bias can manifest itself in different forms. These classes opened her eyes to many nuances that she had not previously considered. Emily realized that bias is not only negative stereotypes, but also ignorance, which can lead to misunderstandings and conflicts. One day, during one of her courses, Emily met a group of students from different countries. Each of them shared their stories about how bias and stereotypes affected their lives. These revelations touched Emily deeply, and she realized that each person is a unique story, full of experiences and emotions. She realized that her job was not only to fight bias, but also to create a space where people could share their stories and feelings. Back at the airport, Emily decided to organize a series of events where employees could share their cultural traditions and experiences. She proposed creating cultural days, where everyone could present their culture through food, music, and art. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon the airport began hosting vibrant and rich events that attracted the attention of not only employees but passengers as well. At the first Culture Day, Emily was struck by how diverse and rich the representation of cultures was. Colleagues brought food from their countries, shared stories about traditions and customs, and held dance and craft workshops. The atmosphere was filled with joy and understanding, and Emily felt that her dream of a more inclusive airport was starting to come true. However, not everything went smoothly. Some employees expressed dissatisfaction, believing that such events were a distraction from work. Emily understood that change takes time and patience. She decided that it was important not only to organize events, but also to explain their meaning. Emily began holding meetings where she shared her knowledge about bias and the importance of cultural diversity. She encouraged colleagues to be open to new ideas and perspectives, explaining that understanding and respecting other cultures enriches not only their work, but also their personal lives. With each new event, Emily noticed how the atmosphere at the airport changed. Her colleagues became more open and responsive, and passengers noted that they felt more comfortable and safe. Emily understood that this was not just her merit, but the result of the teamwork of the whole team. She felt that her efforts were starting to bear fruit, and this inspired her to continue moving forward. Shortly after successfully completing several culture days, Emily received an invitation to speak at a diversity and inclusion conference. This was a huge accomplishment for her, and she knew it was an opportunity to share her experiences and inspire others. Emily prepared her speech, in which she talked about the importance of being open to new ideas and learning from her mistakes. She shared her experiences and how her own journey to understanding bias had changed her life. Emily's talk impressed the conference attendees and she received a lot of positive feedback. This gave her confidence that her work matters and that she can inspire change in others. Emily realized that her journey to understanding is not only about personal transformation, but also about the opportunity to impact the lives of others. With each new step on the path to understanding, Emily realized that her work at the airport was becoming more than just a professional activity, but a real mission. She felt that her efforts to create an inclusive environment were beginning to bear fruit, but at the same time she understood that new challenges lay ahead. Inspired by her successes, Emily decided that she needed to not only continue what she had started, but also deepen her knowledge and skills to cope with the difficulties that arose. After a successful presentation at a conference where she shared her experiences, Emily received many requests for collaboration from other organizations seeking to implement diversity and inclusion principles. This inspired her to create a network of like-minded people where employees from different airports could share experiences and best practices. Emily organized the first meeting, to which she invited colleagues from other cities. She was enthusiastic and hopeful that this would be the beginning of something meaningful. However, despite all the positive changes, Emily encountered resistance from some employees who did not understand or accept her initiatives. Some of them felt that the focus on diversity was distracting from their core responsibilities. Emily understood that such opinions could be the result of fear of change and lack of information. She decided that it was necessary to work not only on implementing new practices, but also on changing the mindset of her colleagues. Emily began to conduct additional workshops, where she shared not only theoretical knowledge, but also practical examples of how diversity can enrich the work environment. She cited examples of successful companies that had implemented inclusive practices and achieved significant results. Emily tried to show that diversity is not just a buzzword, but an important aspect that can increase work efficiency and improve the atmosphere in the team. Along the way, Emily also realized that it was important not only to teach others, but also to be open to criticism and new ideas. She began to actively listen to her colleagues, collecting their opinions and suggestions. This helped her not only to establish contact with those who were skeptical, but also to create an atmosphere of trust and mutual understanding. Emily realized that every voice matters, and that it is in the diversity of opinions that the strength of the team lies. One day, during a meeting, Emily encountered a particularly harsh criticism. A longtime employee at the airport suggested that all the changes were distracting and had no real value. Instead of taking offense or responding aggressively, Emily decided to ask him questions to understand his point of view. This conversation became a turning point. She was able to not only explain her intentions, but also hear his concerns. This gave her the opportunity to adapt her approach and make it more acceptable to everyone. With each new challenge, Emily became more confident in her actions. She understood that the path to inclusion is not only about the joy of success, but also about the difficulties that need to be overcome. Emily continued to develop her skills, learning new methods of working with a team and deepening her knowledge of cultural differences. She began to actively participate in webinars and seminars, where she shared her experiences and learned from others. Emily soon realized that her efforts were starting to pay off. Colleagues who had previously been skeptical began to open up to new ideas and actively participate in events. Passengers also noticed a change in the airport atmosphere, which gave Emily the strength to continue her work. She realized that every step she took was bringing her closer to her goal of creating a place where everyone feels valued and respected. Emily knew there was still work to do, but she was ready for new challenges. Every day brought her new opportunities to grow and develop, and she was determined to continue her journey of inspiring change in others. This journey was not only about changing the world around her, but also about becoming a better person.